real conversations, and some hard truths. Gangs, drugs, and guns. Giving a voice to those willing to sacrifice. We have stories that need to be told. We have lessons that need to be taught. Protect and serve. Welcome to The Quiet Professional.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Nathan Romas with you. Today, we are going to be talking about, our guest's two industries that he's in, leadership and personal growth, with some topics on security. For that, I have Nguyen here. He is a former member of the Royal Canadian Mounted Police with 14 years of experience in patrol, close protection, counterterrorism, and undercover operations. Now he's the Director of Protective Services for a large Canadian university and an award-winning leadership coach in which he shows people how to successfully lead teams and be recognized for their work. So welcome, he.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. I'm super happy to be here.
I'm glad to have you on. You know what? I see a lot of your posts on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I first saw you. And then you kind of reached out and we just kind of connected. And now we're here. So I'm glad to have you on and get to some of these big topics because, well, leadership is definitely something that I would say is lacking in a lot of aspects in life nowadays. So hopefully you can school some people on this and we'll get into that. But first, maybe we'll start with just talking about you and how you got into kind of the security and law enforcement world. If you could kind of start us at the beginning, just run us through, where you're from and a bit about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a Montreal guy. So I grew up in Montreal from a French Canadian mom and a Vietnamese dad who is a Vietnam War veteran who immigrated here after the war. And so, anyways, grew up in Montreal. I was absolutely not the kid that had been dreaming about policing and at all growing up. I had very little exposure to law enforcement growing up, but I always had a real interest in counterterrorism, all of that jazz, and I grew up in the 80s, 90s. So, of course, influenced by Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and all these guys. Like those were the kind of the heroes of when I was a kid. But what really pushed me into law enforcement was 9/11. So essentially, during those days, I was a software salesman. That's what I was doing.
Okay.
And I had zero exposure to law enforcement. But then 9/11 happened. And to be honest, I was completely shocked. And that's what literally pushed me off the sidelines because I was thinking there is no way we can let this happen in our own country.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only thing I knew about counterterrorism at the time was that it was the RCMP. So I was like, well, all right, here we go. So I literally, not knowing what the heck I was getting myself into, I walked into a recruiting office in, when was it? Yeah, it was a couple of weeks after 9/11, and walked into a recruiting office in Montreal for the RCMP. And there's this grizzled old sergeant in there. And he's like, there must have been, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 applicants in the room.
Wow.
And this sergeant, he's walking around and he's just like, out of all of you in this room, statistically, there may be one guy that graduates from the academy. And, just that old military mentality or something. And it was just, as soon as this guy said that, I was like, yep, that's for me. That's totally for me. And so yeah, I applied absolutely not expecting to be selected because I had no background. It's just, I was super interested. I wanted in, but I had zero background experience or anything like that. And so left for the academy and holy cow, fell in love with it. I mean, spent 6 months driving like a maniac, shooting guns, fighting, that type of stuff. I mean, it was like Disney World. I loved it. So I totally got hooked because I had no idea of the whole uniform policing that the RCMP does, and as soon as I had the uniform on and I was, doing patrols and, my first few years, I was deployed in Langley, BC, which is close to Vancouver. And it was just a blast. It was so good. And I loved it. I loved the high speed chases and the fights and learning how to investigate because really that's in the RCMP anyways. It's kind of the baby steps of policing.
Yeah.
You investigate the stolen bike file and the
Yeah.
the B&E file and so you try all of these little baby steps in investigations and it's phenomenal. So I loved it. That's literally how I got in.
Did you apply to any other places? So because like the obviously Mounties aren't the municipal police in Quebec. You have a bunch of different services. So what made you go straight to the RCMP and did you apply anywhere else?
No, that's the only place I applied
Okay.
because my goal from the start was counterterrorism.
Yeah.
And so as soon as, I applied and, it took a long time. It took almost 2 years for them to get back to me and say, you're hired, you're going to the academy. So, but that's the only place I had applied and I got in.
Wow.
And then, spent about 4 years on the road doing the uniform policing thing. I did quite a bit of plain clothes as well back in those days. Doing street crime things, low level drug enforcement, car theft rings, that type of stuff. So had a great time, and then an opportunity came up for me to transfer to Ottawa. So I was approached because they knew I was from back east. So they said, hey, would you be interested in joining the Prime Minister's protective detail? And I had no idea what that was. So I was like, well, all right. So once again, kind of a leap of faith kind of thing. And I just went, okay. At the time we had kids. We had started having kids. And so, they were growing up farther away from their grandparents, their cousins, and there was kind of a family pressure to kind of get closer because the kids didn't know their cousins and so on. So we took the opportunity. We moved to Ottawa, and sorry, I did some close protection for 4 years for Stephen Harper at the time.
Okay.
And Governor General Michael Jean. So I did a lot of close protection here in the country, but traveled extensively. So went to Europe, went to Africa and Asia and all over the place. Sometimes it was awesome.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was boring as heck because, you have to guard a door in a hotel room in Peru or something. And you don't get to see Peru. You just get to see a hallway while you're there, So, so sometimes it was fantastic though, like tons of absolutely amazing experiences from working overseas.
I see. Also, a lot of people don't realize, and this is something I tell people now because I did a couple of years with the Mounties before going to the Edmonton Police. There's so many jobs that you could be there for like 5, 10, maybe longer, and all of a sudden you'll just hear about a job one day, and you're like, I didn't even know that existed.
Yep.
Like it's very region specific, right? Like there's a lot of programs on the Great Lakes that if you're out here in the prairies, you're not really looking at like anything in a boat. not there's not much going on here with regard to that. But then on the coast, it's like all different programs and stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yep.
Like the range of stuff you can get into. So
yeah, really. Yeah, and so after my years in close protection, well, I should backtrack here. During my years in close protection, what I did is I was really pushing hard to get into counterterrorism. So in the RCMP, that team is called INSET. It's the Integrated National Security Enforcement Team. So INSET. And so it's a combination of the OPP, the RCMP, municipal police forces, intelligence services, etc., border services. It's an integrated team, and we work counterterrorism files. And so I pushed really hard, and eventually was able to get in. So I was super happy. And then for 6 years, really worked my tail off in there. And most of what I was doing in counterterrorism was source handling, agent handling,
Very
that type
cool.
of stuff. So for those listeners who don't know exactly what that is we would go out, we would have very specific training and skill set, and we would go out and essentially you make friends with all sorts of people that may or may not be in contact with the bad people that you're investigating. And so you're convincing these people to either give you information and or to actually take action on your behalf.
Mm.
So, for example, I could convince Nathan to take a very specific package to a very specific residence and leave that package, on the dining table or something. So those are most of the things I was doing in counterterrorism.
Very cool. Yeah, you know what?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask maybe just real briefly to not throw you on a sidetrack, but what was it like doing the close protection? If we could talk a little bit more on that.
Yeah, for
Stephen
sure.
Harper
Yeah.
stuff, because I imagine that's going to play into maybe some of the leadership conversation we have. But
Mhm.
yeah, when you're doing a lot of the traveling, you said you just started having a family. Like, was that kind of hard on the home life?
Yes, it's fortunately there's very little surprise travel or any at all.
Oh,
You
okay.
always know several weeks ahead of time that you're leaving. Thing is, sometimes you're gone for a while.
Mhm.
Because, for example, if the governor general travels to China, let's say, then the Department of Foreign Affairs they've organized this thing like 9 months ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
It's organized way ahead of time. But a couple of weeks prior to the governor general arriving in China, there's going to be an advance team that goes. So if you're lucky, you get to go on the advance team. So you're on the team, you're heading out, and then you'll spend maybe a week, 10 days prior to the VIP arrival, making sure you're just planning the trip, you're scouting the venues, you're meeting with local law enforcement, local intelligence services, that type of stuff, liaising with all these people, and you're organizing everything. And so
Okay.
once the VIP lands, then you're essentially guiding them through the whole circuit.
Yeah.
And so if, for example, the governor general would stay at locations for a week, 2 weeks, so you'd be there a week in advance, maybe 10 days in advance, and then you're there for the whole trip after, right? So you can be gone for 3 weeks, a little bit more than 3 weeks sometimes.
Oh, wow.
And then for the prime minister, it's very different because the prime minister travels, all of his destinations are very short term. He might spend an afternoon in Paris but then he'll go and have a couple of meetings in Belgium and then hop onto the plane again and maybe go to Germany or whatever. So you might be away for a week with the prime minister, but you're never in the same spot for more than half a day sometimes. There was one trip where we were there for 3-4 days, I think, which was the longest I was on in one single place, and it was the G8 summit.
Mhm.
So it was the G8 summit in Rome at the time, which was amazing.
Yeah, I imagine that wouldn't be the worst place to go. Did you actually get to go out and see anything?
Oh yeah, oh
Oh, good.
tons. Yeah, we got to because I was protecting a specific person at the time, and that person went on multiple tours of Rome. So I got to see so many cool things.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
like, hey, can you throw in a few tours? Like these people, prime minister or somebody wants to go tour as well. At least get us
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And yeah, amazing stories from the trip to Rome. Just really, really cool stuff.
So, yeah, you did 14 years with the RCMP.
Yep.
And what made you transition into? Was it directly into the security that you're doing now?
Nope. So essentially, after my 6 years in counterterrorism, I was completely burnt out. And police officers listening to this post
Mhm.
or this podcast will totally understand when I mean I was police burnt out.
Yeah.
Like I was burnt to a crisp. And because at the time, what had happened is we were working a massive, massive, massive file, which we'd been running for 2.5 years or something, working 16-hour days, like continuous, like 7 days a week.
Wow.
It was insane, like a really, really, really big file. And as you know, as per the policing world, you're always at like 50% capacity on any given day. So you're always working like crazy. And then as we made the arrests and we wrapped up this investigation, there was the attack on Parliament Hill. So,
Mhm.
so instead of being able to kind of wind down and kind of catch our breath, there was the attack on Parliament Hill, and so that ramped up another absolutely gigantic investigation. And so again, we were running 18-hour days for weeks on end, and it was insanity. So by the end of that, I was exhausted, like completely exhausted. And so sorry, I chose to literally to leave the RCMP and to just go do something else. Crazily enough, I decided to start my own business.
Yeah.
So I don't know how I was thinking that would be more relaxing because it wasn't. But I started my own business, and I wanted to do. I think I really needed to experience something completely different than the world of policing. And uh, as a frontline police officer, um, I really connected with children. I really, I saw the plight of kids um, all over. So I decided to start a business at the time that was dedicated to helping kids with learning disabilities. And so I ran that business for 4 years, invented all sorts of cool stuff for that business. It was awesome. And that's really where um, I really connected with leadership because throughout my career in policing, I had, the privilege of working with absolutely amazing people.
Mhm.
But the one reality that's, again, people listening to this are going to smile, but the expression, a supervisor makes it rain or shine on
Yeah.
a team. And that is so true because I have so many examples of I'm working on a team in the RCMP and everything's just phenomenal, like best place in the world to be at, and then our boss gets promoted, somebody else takes the spot, and it just turns to pure hell. Like
Yeah.
people quit, people move to other departments, like literally because of a supervisor. And so that's kind of where I got my exposure to, how important leadership is and just having basic skills to manage a team. So when I got into business, I got really, really obsessive about, learning as much as I could. So I took seminars and certifications, and I read books and, podcast. And it was just
Yeah.
like a real immersion in leadership for years. That's what I did because I wanted to run my team in my business
Yeah.
the best way that I could, and I got them into leadership as well, and so on, and it really paid off. Like there's no question about that. It totally paid off.
Well, you be very invested, right? Because especially when it's your own business, like
Yep.
you want to see it succeed. So if you're a person who cares, then yeah, you're going to work harder and try and do better by your people. And I mean, especially when you leave kind of the bureaucracy of like a paramilitary organization and the very rigid, like top down structure, it gives you a lot of freedom to now kind of be your own person and, see what traits you are good at and what you're not good at and what kind of character you can actually be. So yeah, I totally get what you're saying with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's you when you become responsible for people, you realize how much you have to invest in people for them to grow.
Hmm.
But you need a skill set. Like you can't really improvise this stuff. Well, you could, but you're going to stumble often, right? And so I got really, really involved in that. And then my business eventually kind of outgrew me in the sense that I'm just a cop, right? And I had a business that was helping kids with. Eventually, my business grew to help kids with autism and all sorts of mental health issues, and it was way beyond what I could understand or
Okay.
have an impact in my own business. So my business eventually was taken over by social workers who really drove the business. It's still running today, still helping hundreds and hundreds of kids every year, which is great. But then I had kind of a professional decision to make. I was like, well, do I stay in business? Do I start a new business? Or, do I go back to my initial love, law enforcement, security, that type of stuff? So I kind of poked around and ended up getting a job in corporate security, literally at a backyard barbecue, like
Okay.
having a beer with a couple of guys, and one of the guys like, "Hey, are you looking for a job?" I'm like, "Sure, okay." And he's like, "Yeah, I got something for you." I'm like, "Perfect." So hopped into corporate security, and then eventually, I actually it was a buddy of mine in the RCMP reached out and said, "Hey, there's a position, a director position at a local university. Why don't you throw your hat in the ring?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "All right." And again, not knowing what I was getting myself into, threw my hat in the ring, not expecting at all to get it. And I got it. I got the position. So, yeah, now I've been managing a team of about 65 people now
Okay.
for the past almost 3 years. So, yeah, it's been almost 3 years of really doing a lot of leadership coaching, a lot of coaching with this team, putting this team back on its feet and really performing. So an incredible journey.
Very cool. Well, maybe because we're kind of going to focus on leadership and some of the security aspects. Maybe we'll
Sure,
just
yeah,
kind of start with the security stuff since we're already in that realm. Um, but yeah, so I wanted to ask, just do you see any kind of trends in security right now? And I'll come back to asking that again. Just kind of flesh this out a bit, but um, with security, what I see here, like in the West, um, we get a lot of like hands off approach, and a lot of people are kind of like, let the police deal with it. Like, just be a professional set of eyes, be a good reporter. Um, but what's your take on where the security industry is going when we're talking about private security or um, out here we have peace officers on our university campus, so they have like a limited range of use of force tools that they can use. But yeah, we got kind of a mishmash of like some people have a baton, some people have a baton and OC spray, and then it just kind of goes up and up. But a lot of it I find is can be hands off for the most part, and they try to defer it to police to deal with. So what's your experience with that, and where is this kind of coming from, or where is it going to?
that's such a good question. I mean, it's such a giant topic in our industry right now, and so all I can tell you is from my perspective, of course, and so the current security industry is, just to simplify it, it's a little bit more complicated than that, but just to simplify it, really, there's kind of two areas, right? You have the mega security corporations,
Okay.
the allied G4S type
Yeah.
security mega corporations, right? They're giant. And they're kind of the retail version of security where essentially your your basic ability is the ability to breathe. If you
Hmm.
can stand someplace, you barely have a uniform, and you cost almost nothing, right? So it's the really value village of policing or security, I should say. So there's that end of security, which is the most widely used security, because most organizations, whether you're a liquor store or you're a bank or whatever, security is kind of a thorn in your side. It's absolutely not your main business. Your core activity is serving a client, a service or selling products or whatever. Security is an expense.
Yes.
It's necessary, but it's like insurance. You don't want to pay for insurance, but you kind of have to, right?
Yeah.
And security is the same thing. So most organizations, the vast majority of organizations, they're going to spend as little as possible on security. So they're going to go for a G4S or an Allied or whatever. That obviously skill sets vary within even these organizations, but generally they're very, it's very low
Yeah.
expectation, low performance, right? And then you have like these boutique security, like these little specialized shops that offer super high end stuff, right? And so they're on the complete opposite spectrum here in security, where they'll have highly trained guards that have everything from, they're all jujitsu trained, let's say, and they have de-escalation training and regular updates on their training and first aid and CPR and advanced CPR with oxygen and
Mm.
all of that stuff, right? So they can have really high end stuff, and they have investigative capabilities and all of that jazz. They're nearly police officers,
Mm.
right? They're almost cops, and I'm speaking for Canada here, where all security guards do not carry firearms. But in other countries, like in the US, they will be armed with firearms. But in Canada, in very rare occurrences, will you have a security guard with a firearm. So there's, if they're carrying money, for example, they can be armed. Or if they're working for the Royal Canadian Mint, for example,
Hmm.
which is a giant facility that's filled with gold and silver, well, then these people are all carrying weapons in there. But other than that, usually security outfits don't have weapons or firearms, I should say. So there's kind of these two extremes, right, in the industry. And when it comes to the hands-off part,
Hmm.
right, you were saying, a lot of guards are hands-off. It really comes down to insurance, and it comes down to liability. And most organization, let's say you're running a business that manufactures furniture, and you've got a couple of security guards walking around, you don't want any liability, having a security guard punching some guy in the face or something, right?
Yeah.
So these corporations have very clear hands-off policies, like, do your best to de-escalate a person or have that person leave our premise. If they don't, call the police, kind of thing, right?
Yeah. That's kind of what I figured it comes down to.
Yep.
It's end of the day, I guess it's about money and liability, right? Like, I don't want to have to pay someone
Yep.
even if they're doing something illegal on my property,
Yep.
and I push them and they slip on ice. Am I going to be paying $1 million to this person for whatever reason?
Yep.
So yeah, I guess it all comes back to that.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that if we're talking about the future of where all of this is going, the way I see it is that the large mega corporations of this world, they are going to be replacing the bottom end security guard with tech.
Okay.
It's, to me, that is completely inevitable, right?
Yeah.
Why pay somebody to just sit and look out the window when you can have cameras with AI or drones or whatever that's coming out, right? It just makes so much more sense from a financial standpoint. So I think that that's one of the things that we're going to see over the next, 5-10 years, probably, is a slow erosion of the very, very basic security guard. Basically, um, the minimal activity is all going to be covered by tech. Is my opinion, and then I think that the specialized security shops are going to start getting more and more and more business,
Mm-hmm.
because whether you're in the US, whether you're in Canada or Europe, Australia, wherever, violent crime is going up and up and up and up. And it's not stopping, and it won't stop. So I think that specialized security is going to start making a lot more sense over time. Um, I can see that the security industry will rally, will organize. There's going to be a lot better standards, like national standards, provincial standards
Okay.
regarding security, because there is none of that right now. There's very little control over security, and what training you need. And right now, I mean, getting a security guard license is a joke, right? And so to be able to respond to what's happening on the market, I think that the more specialized organizations are going to be getting a lot more business over time. And then what you're going to see is the big organizations are going to start specializing. I think the days of just the discount security guard, those days are numbered. Like
Yeah.
those are meant to disappear within the next 5-10 years. Is what I think.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like for the like cameras and other things, even drones, they've gone down a lot in price. But if I could replace one person with, like 5 or 6 cameras, the cameras never turn off. They don't need a break. They are pretty good at capturing as much as a witness. Humans as witnesses are not that great. Like when people call the police, they'll say, I saw this person run off and they had a red jacket. And then you find the person and they have a blue jacket. It's like people are actually really bad once they get stressed out.
Yep.
They start seeing all kinds of things and saying the opposite of what's going on. But yeah, that's like, and not to get into like a dystopian future type thing, but I can kind of see where it's like police are struggling to recruit so many people. They can't be at every single call. So it's like, well, I don't know, the common person can't hire a security guard, be expensive. But when you talk about like a lot of these places like malls or big shopping centers or industrial areas, they'll have security guard driving around and just watching a bunch of properties. But maybe they have to get into more of that security aspect, like hiring more people. And if that includes like more of these specialized security type people, I could see that being kind of the way of the future. Police can't be everywhere at all times, especially when certain things like a break and enter or whatever, maybe that takes like 2 days for somebody to get to you. So people start taking security a little more seriously. And you bring up a really good point when you say like people, I guess, don't want to pay for it till they really need it. And then they're like, okay, it was good that I had that. But I think the general attitude in Canada, we're very laid back, and we just think like nothing bad ever happens. And then we get like, the one big thing you were mentioning, the attack on Parliament Hill. Just here recently in Edmonton, we had the guy running through City Hall. And not to knock security, like especially the one here in Edmonton, I really don't know what happened at that one. I know what everybody else sees on the news. And but when those things happen, I think people go, okay, or at least they should be going, what the hell are we missing here? Like, how did this happen? and we need to implement change. So maybe you start going a little more hard line on the security and putting your money up front rather than, kind of paying on the back end of things. So
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think that, if we're talking about tech and the future of security, I think that we're going to see new positions open up, new types of jobs be created, right? Because if let's say in 5, 10 years from now, which is more than reasonable to think it's going to happen, but you're going to see a ton of automation, a ton of AI. So, the job of dispatchers, for example, or the people that work these control centers, these OCCs of the world,
mhm.
their skill set is essentially going to change. I think we're going to see not only comms people, but you're going to see tech operators like drone operators and stuff like that starting to show up in these environments, because now you're going to need people to maintain the tech or to interpret what the tech is saying to the operator to say, hey, because, we humans have a very limited set of senses, right?
Yeah.
But, drones can be equipped with infrared, ultraviolet, like super
Yeah.
equipped with sound and networked in with microphones, and like it can be a whole network of tech, right, that monitors an area. And so you're going to see, I think, a lot of different positions, tech positions opening up in these in the security world, where your basic security guard is going to disappear, and you're going to have a lot more tech operators that are going to start showing up in the security world, I think. And policing, same thing in policing.
Well, you know what? Even in policing, we've seen some transition away from police responding to certain calls, and now either they are using different type of services to show up,
Yep.
or we're doing things over the phone, and people can upload their statements or documents to us, right? So as long as they come out with like a secure enough platform to do that, yeah, we kind of see our function change with the times. So
Yep.
I guess it's not really something to fight. It's just something like, hey, get some new skills, get educated, do all these different things, and keep up with the times. Um, so on the security front, I want to just specifically kind of hone in on universities too. Uh, with universities, like they're pretty open and free flowing and stuff.
Very.
Is there ever when we see like a lot of the stuff in the States? I mean, they got shootings all the time,
Yep.
and whatever else goes on down there. But they have a lot of big events. We don't have that up here as much. Uh, do you think, is there a specific reason why? And do you, as a director, like how often do you hear about maybe just like vague threats, like and then you do your assessments and everything else
Mhm.
if it's credible, but is it like as little as people think, or is it more than people think? So just kind of wondering like what's the percentages out there?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great question. Um, so yeah, in general, in Canada, there's very little threats to universities or colleges in general. Um, there's why that is. I mean, I think it's a society thing. In general, there's a lot less shootings, a lot less firearms
Yeah.
stuff in Canada than there is in the US. It will always be like that. I don't think we'll ever catch up the US on that front, just because of who we are as a nation, but also just because of access, right? Access to firearms is a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit different in Canada, and it's a culture thing, right? In the US, they're very gun oriented.
Hmm.
It's part of the media, it's part of the culture, it's part of everything firearms, right? And in Canada, it isn't. That said, campuses are enormous, right? You can imagine a campus as being like a small city. So the campus I work on currently has just about 50,000 people
Hmm.
going in and out of that place, it's like a small city. So, as you can imagine, there are, cases of mental health issues, depression, that type of stuff. So, are there threats to campuses at large? Sure, there are. Are they super credible, or do they happen often? Not very much, but they happen. They get investigated. Um, University campuses will always liaise with the local police force. Usually the municipal police force,
Mhm.
and they work pretty hand in hand, um, because campuses end up being a big catchment inside a municipality, right? So, whether it's a place where a lot of vehicles get stolen or dumped, or
Yeah.
a lot of drugs get sold or not, but so there's a lot going on campuses, and so usually municipal forces are working hand in hand with the university security department, whatever they're called, and so there are threats. It happens, but most campuses in Canada, what they're seeing is mostly is mental health calls. Like it's
Okay.
a lot of mental health calls, and security departments on campuses at large, like worldwide, they generally deal with medicals, like it's first aid stuff.
Okay.
The football player smashed his head, or the hockey player busted a knee, or whatever, right? So the staff get called to a lot of first aid calls, but they do investigate. Have to investigate like sexual assaults, thefts, lots of thefts on campuses, right?
Hmm.
Cell phones, laptops, that type of stuff. Lots of electronics getting stolen, and the what's a different dynamic that people kind of ignore from university campuses is most university campuses are research centers, right? That's
Okay. Yeah.
most of the research throughout our country, throughout the whole country, is done on university campuses. They have whole sections that are entire buildings that are research labs, portals to the future and whatever,
Yeah. Yeah. They'll be connected to a hospital or,
dark matter and whatever it is they're researching.
yeah.
And so there's millions and millions and millions of dollars in research that's occurring, like hundreds of millions of dollars in research every year on university campuses. So securing the data, securing the labs. A lot of labs will have highly toxic materials in there, nuclear material, that type of stuff. And so you need to be securing these places properly with
Mm.
policies and physical measures and physical patrols and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important.
Just want to make sure we get enough time on our second topic. So maybe we'll do a hard pivot just to that,
Sure.
talking about the leadership side of things. So with that, I mean, we already kind of covered a bit of your influence and how you got into that world. One thing I am wondering though is, do you have any particular mentors or people that, as you were kind of making that transition into the leadership realm, like you said, you listened to a lot of podcasts. That's something that I was kind of took on, and I was listening to podcasts and started doing this. Anybody in particular that really influences you, or you read more than others?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, my Bible is Extreme Ownership
Mm.
by Jocko Willink. So Jocko is a huge inspiration to me. You know, Dave Goggins, huge inspiration. He's not so much he's into kind of personal leadership. But yeah, these people really, really influenced me. Um, uh, Simon Sinek is fantastic with his content, but there's so many. If I could recommend a couple of books, I mean, for sure, Extreme Ownership. There's a book called The Speed of Trust as well, which is phenomenal, and it's written by Stephen Covey, but the son, not the father, because the father is dead. But the Speed of Trust, for example, phenomenal, phenomenal book. There's a book that's called Tribal Leadership, which is an absolute must. If you're into leading teams, you need to get yourself Tribal Leadership. Can't remember the name of the author now, but again, really, really good. And there's also a book like Good to Great, and all of these books are just must-haves if you're in leadership for sure.
Yeah, I think most people recognize a few of those names. At least most of the listeners that I kind of capture, they'll know Jocko and Dave Goggins. With yourself and your leadership style, like how would you kind of describe your leadership style? And is there anything that you're kind of aspiring to be, or things that you think you could do better?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, if I was going to boil down my leadership style to one sentence, I would say, you get what you tolerate.
Mm.
That's it. You get what you tolerate, and you can go from there. But my leadership style is very, very aligned with extreme ownership, Jocko Willing, that type of stuff, where it's accountability is extremely important. Building trust is extremely important, and so on. But my opinion in the world of leadership and in the world in general, I think that we've, over the past few years, maybe a decade, we've really handled people with kids' gloves.
Yes.
Everything needs to be padded, and you can't really talk about the subject. You have to kind of go around and negotiate, and I disagree with that, because by doing that, we've created a whole generation of employees who can't take criticism, who
Yes.
can't have a conversation, a whole generation of employees who, when they become leaders, they also cannot have a discussion with a problematic employee because they don't know how to handle this. They're not emotionally capable of handling these things, and they don't have the skill set either, right?
Well, I always make a distinction I always say they become the managers. Leaders is a different,
Oh yeah, yeah,
so they'll
100%.
become the managers. Being a leader while you're a manager is like, okay, now you're really getting what you're supposed to. But yeah, no, sorry.
Yep. Yeah, no, 100%. And so, you know, if we're talking about my style, is I'm very direct, I'm very professional, but I'm, firm, but fair. And I that's what I teach. That's literally what I show my own team.
Mm.
The team that I'm managing now, I teach all of my frontline supervisors, all of my mid-range, and even my upper executives. I show them how to be direct and to address issues and to not leave things lingering, but by using very specific skills, by using techniques that help you get to the result you want. And there's a lot of psychology that backs this up. But it's just, in this day and age, if you want to get things done in a reasonable amount of time without spending a ton of money, you need to have skills. You can't just fumble your way through a leadership position. You need to know what you're doing.
Well, how do you have those hard conversations though? Like, so, and I know a lot of people are super, I'll say afraid, but also like people just don't like the confrontation, right?
Yep.
They don't want to go into that. And I think genuinely some people are like, they just feel bad telling someone, hey, you suck at this job. Like,
Yeah.
or you need to do better.
Yep.
So how do you have those conversations with somebody?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, the best tool I think anybody can have is something that's been promoted a lot by Simon Sinek, which is a technique called BFI. So Bravo Fox India. And so the B stands for behavior, F stands for feelings, and I stands for impact. And there's various iterations of this model by other leadership coaches, but just to go over really quickly,
Mhm.
it's a method that you use that really allows you to bring a topic up with an employee, a problematic employee, for example. It could be your spouse, it could be your child too. BFI works in any scenario, but essentially, what you do is first you acknowledge the behavior. All right. So let's say, for example, Nathan, you sent me, like, I'm your supervisor, and you sent me a super rude email. Let's say that's the scenario. I could acknowledge the behavior. I could say, Nathan, I've just received your email. In your email, I can see that you're saying that I'm an effing this and effing that, and there's no effing way you're going to do this, and blah blah blah.
I would never put that in writing, by the way. Might say it somebody, but no, I wouldn't put it in writing.
so I acknowledge your behavior, right?
Yes.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just saying this is what happened. This is what I observed, right? Then I switch into feelings. So I could say, I have to, and in this section, it's all about saying how you feel genuinely. You don't improvise here. So genuinely, I could say, Nathan, we've always had a great relationship. I don't understand why you sent this to me, and it really hurt me. Like, it's I'm upset, but I'm disappointed. I'm hurt by what you said about about me. Let's say in your email, blah blah blah. This is how it made me feel, right? A B C D, and then you finish with impact. And you always start that section by saying, I'm afraid that. And then you speak about impact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid that if you keep sending me emails like this, Nathan, it's going to completely destroy the trust that we have between each other. Our capacity to work is not going to, it's going to be negated. We're not going to be able to do anything. And if you keep doing that, I'm going to have to intervene as your supervisor, because this is completely unprofessional, and I'm going to need to, impose some penalties here.
Yeah.
Because of this. And then you finish the technique by simply, you stop talking and you just look at the person in the eye and you do nothing. So essentially, what you've done from a psychological point of view is you've made the other person, first you didn't accuse them, but you make the other person realize how their actions made you feel, which most leaders never do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You never know how your actions make other people feel. But now this technique, it does that, for one. And for two, it clearly shows you, without any accusations, it shows you this is what's going to happen if you keep doing this.
Yeah.
And so what happens, 99% of the people never intend to hurt other people's feelings. They vent, they want to, they're frustrated about something, but they never intend to hurt you inside your heart. Like, that's never the intention, or rarely is it. And so, and I've used this technique many, many times. What happens is the person kind of reflects for a few seconds and they're like, I'm really sorry.
Yes.
That's absolutely not what I intended to say, or I didn't intend to hurt you. I just needed to get out that I was super pissed off about whatever. And it's like, okay, all right, now we're talking, right?
Yeah.
And so, but now you just let the other person go, right? And I remember one of the first times I used BFI with one of my employees. He actually came back. Like, we finished the conversation. He apologized. He was like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do that again. I apologize. That was totally out of line. And then he left my office and then came back 10 minutes later. And he's like, dude, that was the best conversation I've had with a boss ever.
Wow.
And I was like, that's great. That's awesome. And so then I taught him the technique.
Yeah. Well, you know what? And as you were saying that, so right when you said like about the behavior at the beginning, I was writing down here, setting common ground. So when you have somebody or an issue that you want to confront with somebody, I think you really have to start at common ground, because I've had arguments with people where it's like you can tell, like, I'm talking about this one thing way over here, and you're saying things that have, like, in my mind, nothing to do with what we're talking about. So clearly, it's like we're just arguing for no reason. We're arguing two separate points on, separate sides of whatever. But when you come at it with like, hey, this is what you sent this, or you said this, it lets that other person know, okay, this is what they believe. Maybe right at the onset, you don't even have to get to the other two steps, because they go, actually, you misunderstood that, or it was intended this way, especially like an email, right? There's no tone, there's no inflection in there. So it's just words on
Yep.
paper. So you're like, did they really mean to send this? Like, what's the purpose?
Yep.
You could almost end the issue right on the first step.
Yep.
If you're like, we're actually, not talking about the same thing. If it is the same thing, though, then you can start from that common ground. Because if you're not starting with like some foundation of what you're even talking about, there's no agreement on like the facts that we have to discuss.
Yep.
Then you really can't go anywhere with that. So I thought that was a very interesting point. One of the things, when you talk about like the type of boss that you are, and I've been thinking about this lots, and then just through a lot of the podcast guests that I've had, like people in really incredible leadership positions and doing the true leadership aspect of it, is almost like your reputation precedes you, in that, you had that great interaction with that one person there, and they come back and give you that immediate feedback. But maybe they go out now, or another person comes to the team, actually probably be a better example. So another person comes to the team. And if that new person has an issue with you for whatever it might be, you now kind of have like that ally on your side who can say, I don't know, man, like that guy, like he's pretty fair and he like helps out. And, so it's like setting those early expectations, and you being a consistent leader with your kind of your character. I think the consistency really helps people. So I don't know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, 100%. And you know what? You're bringing up such an interesting point, which is when you're doing leadership right, there's, I the term doesn't come up to mind right now, but it's just that effect, that lingering effect of leadership.
Yeah.
You're not even there anymore. Let's say you're out on vacation, right? But your staff know you as a person that's very, whatever. Let's say
It's your reputation.
you've got a very strong reputation at, let's say, not tolerating people that are late. Let's say.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're there or not there. At some point, when you do it right and you do it often enough, sometimes you can be gone for 2 weeks on a project, on whatever, you're gone. But everybody knows, like, hey, you can't show up late,
Mhm.
because, because if the boss was here, you'd be like, and so, and I don't want to just talk negatively, but also on a positive side, like it's just, if you have a reputation of celebrating successes, right? Really recognizing when somebody does a great job and celebrating that success. Well, even if you're not there, you're gone on vacation. You come back from vacation, you've got a whole bunch of emails from employees saying, "Hey, by the way, Nathan was awesome. He arrested this guy who was doing blah blah blah." And so the culture remains, and so there's kind of this stickiness to your leadership that,
Yeah.
when you're doing it right and you're really influencing the people around you, at some point you're not even there anymore, and it's that effect still lingers with your crew.
That is something that we used to do in policing. Like when I first got to the Edmonton Police of 2013, first few years, you would see people would send attaboy emails. And it was just, you could show up to a call and you just kind of went a little bit above and beyond. You did, maybe it was the end of your shift and you're just like, whatever, I'll work right to the minute. Like, and I'll stay out. It's not a big deal. Or you just did one of the kind of the crappier tasks in the investigation that nobody else wants to do. But you did it without kind of complaining. And someone, the sergeant on the other squad, or even just one of your peers, one of your other constables, they would send an email to your boss and say like, hey, I just want like you to know this person did this awesome job and they didn't have to. But that's showing real leadership. And that has definitely gone away. I mean, especially now with just a lot of the different narratives and all the things that policing has gone through. That is almost non-existent. Like I've seen or heard of it like once every, I don't know, 6 months you hear somebody getting something.
Yep.
And not that it has to be overkill. It doesn't have to be every single task you ever do, but
Nope.
Just once in a while, letting people know, hey, you did a good job and you didn't have to. That goes a long, long way for their morale and them then going like, a simple email, maybe that energizes a person for like 2 or 3 months.
Yep.
And they kind of still in their head and they're like, hey, I'm working harder. I'm doing all these things. When it starts getting 6 months and a year out, nobody's ever recognized you for anything. You might not even be asking for it, but when you get it, you're like, oh yeah, that feels good, right?
Yep. 100%. And my philosophy on celebrating successes is I think you need to do both. I think, let's say, for example, I'm your supervisor and you've done a really great job on a specific file. I think I need to do two things to really make this stick. One thing, I need to go see you face to face, not an email. I need to go shake your hand and go, Nathan,
Yeah.
man, that was awesome. That was a great job. The way you wrote that file up was phenomenal. The initiatives you showed, and to give actual praise, not a keep doing what you're doing. That sucks.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of feedback is that?
It's not genuine.
No, not at all. So you need to give genuine feedback and say, hey, that specific thing you did right there, that was great leadership, or that was great initiative, or that was super creative, and blah, blah, blah. Recognize the person face to face. Then you need to recognize the person publicly.
Mm-hmm.
I think that goes a long way, because not only does it feel good for Nathan if I send an email, an attaboy to you and let's say your team and your supervisor, or another person supervising on your team, whatever. And I say, hey, Nathan, guys, I just want to highlight Nathan's really great work on this file, blah, blah. Not only does it feel good to you, but it also shows everybody else the kind of attitude that we're looking. You're setting a culture, you're creating something. So there's these two elements. The kind of double-sided blade of this thing is that when you're a leader, you have to be very, very conscious of what you celebrate. And that's a lesson I had to learn, because in my early days managing the team I'm managing now, my team was, when I arrived, the team was very hands-off, and we weren't like the crew was doing very little arresting and so on and so forth. And I'm like, okay, that's over. From this point forward, if somebody's committing an offense in our backyard, we're doing something about it. We're going to arrest and so on and so forth, right? We were taking the gloves off a little bit,
Setting those expectations. Yeah.
And setting expectations and setting rules of engagement and so on. But then I started, like, every time somebody was arresting someone, I'd celebrate it. What did I create? I created a culture where arrest good, not arrest bad. And so I realized, holy crap, I need to kind of backpedal here a little bit, because I needed to make people realize, guys, not arresting, resolving a situation without arresting is also good, right? Having a conversation with that person and maybe convincing them to don't do that again and leave and don't come back and whatever. Like, you don't have to slap cuffs every time, because anyways, the local police force just doesn't have the capacity to pick up everybody that we're arresting. But at the end of the day, when you're in a leadership position, you have to consider these things. You have to consider, okay, I need to be careful how I
Yeah.
do those attaboys, right? Because if I'm always rewarding the one thing, then you're creating this culture of that one thing.
Yeah. You don't want to create a monster on either end of the spectrum. Ones who do
Exactly.
absolutely nothing and are just, could be slugs. And then on the other end where it's like the most hard line, kind of militant. It's like, you took $2, I'm arresting you. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
could we have shuffled that person off and just banned them? Like, we're just kind of coming up to the end of our time. There's a lot of stuff I didn't get to that, man, I'll have to have you on again.
No problem.
But we went a little longer on the security stuff because I was really interested in some of that. And, but we didn't even get into, like, I wanted to talk about leadership. Is it more inborn or is it instilled in people? Can you learn that type of stuff? Talking about manipulation,
Oh yeah,
good or bad on
Yep.
people and stuff. So I think I'll have to save a couple topics for the next time. But I want to make sure you get a chance to just say how people can follow you, find you, and all of your work. So where can they kind of connect with you?
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. That's awesome. I'm definitely good for a part 2 if you want to.
Yeah.
But yeah, if look to anybody listening or watching this, if this resonated with you, right? If you're looking to get those skill sets because you want to get promoted, for example, it makes total sense, right? To invest in yourself and really get yourself to the next level. I'd be happy to chat with you. So you can reach me on my directly on my website at teamup.ca. So it's team-up.ca. Just go on there, hit the button for a free 30-minute coaching session, and I'll literally help you solve those problems right there on the spot. And then we can map out together right there in that free session the exact steps you're going to need to take to go from where you're at in your career now to where you want to be, making more money, having less stress, all that fun stuff. So just book a free coaching session. It'll be my pleasure to spend some time with you and help you out.
Awesome. And are you on? Well, you're on LinkedIn. That's where I found you.
I am on LinkedIn. So yeah, of course, if you want to, if you want to see some content every week, I post a video on LinkedIn. I always give some good leadership tips. A lot of the times, it's stuff that I've learned myself. Like as I'm growing as a leader, I'll realize something and go, I think other people could use this as well. And I just put it in a video and put it out on LinkedIn. So just follow me on LinkedIn as well. And you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. It'd be my pleasure to chat with you. Again, the website teamup.ca.
Awesome. Well, I'll put all that up in the episode description when we get it up. And I'll remind people for both he and myself with the Quiet Professional, make sure you share, like, comment, spread the word, spread the message, because I think we're getting some good content out there and we're really trying to help people. Say thank you for coming on and hang on the line for 2 seconds.
Thank you.